Said it's the first time we've had the opportunity to talk about El Clasico, and you may be relieved to know, I don't know, that we're not going to talk about the VAR decision, because I think now people have established their opinion on it, and us talking about it isn't going to change their mind. What I do want to talk about is what happened after that decision, after Sergio Ramos scored that penalty. And I think Lionel Messi won a lot of sympathisers over the summer, obviously, clearly wanting to leave the club, clearly falling out of love with the board and the president in particular. And I think people get that. But I think what would be very difficult for them to comprehend is that you've still got 25 minutes to go in the biggest match of the season against your biggest rivals, and on a stage in which you want your captain to step up and take control and to get everybody together. He didn't do that. In fact, you could argue he did the opposite.
Yeah, I think this is a big part of the analysis of the Clasico, and obviously I would expand it beyond Messi as well, because so much of the focus has been on the impact of that penalty. So much of the focus has been on the, if you like, the irritation from Barcelona about the fact that penalty was given, and I think that overlooks this very fundamental question that you're posing now, which is there was half an hour to go. And in half an hour, now obviously there's no guarantee that you find a way back in. By definition, of course, the game is harder than it was before, and you've got a Real Madrid team that's now playing more defensively, and perhaps you have fewer spaces to try and exploit. There's much less room to try and play. But the reaction from Barcelona was almost non-existent. And it was almost non-existent, I think, throughout the side. But you're quite right. It was particularly poor from Messi. I thought Messi had actually played really quite well for an hour. But from the moment of that penalty onwards, there wasn't really a rebellion, wasn't there? Was there? There was no real fight. There was no real sense that, okay, we can turn this round. There wasn't a clear idea. There wasn't really very much character either. And it's curious as well, because in that half an hour, when Messi did far less than he'd done in the previous hour, that was actually the time at which his teammates sort of looked for him more. And I think there you see a problem. And I don't necessarily think you see a problem solely in terms of the fact that Messi then didn't lead the team on, although obviously that by definition is a problem. I think you also saw a problem in the fact that the team kind of emotionally, in terms of personality, in terms of characteristics and so on, at a time in which they need to chase the game, they have no other plan except to look to Messi and see what he can do. And of course, if Messi then doesn't do it, Barcelona have very, very little. And I think you're right. I think you can ask very, very big questions about Barcelona, and in particular about the man who is supposed to lead them, and in particular about the man whose teammates appear to be looking for him to lead them. And Messi in that last half an hour, yes, it's true, against a more packed defence, did not really perform.
But this isn't against the Real Madrid of old. This is against the Real Madrid who leaked goals against Shakhtar, who lost against, obviously, Cadiz as well, leading into this. Is Messi at Barcelona turning into Messi at Argentina?
I think that is a really interesting parallel to draw, and I honestly don't know the answer. But I do think that it is worth talking about how for a very, very long time, when there were question marks hanging over Messi in terms of his significance for the Argentinian national team, those question marks indeed about leadership, which I always felt were a little bit facile, actually, to be perfectly honest with you. But those question marks were there, and people talked about whether or not he performed at the kind of level that he should do. There was always a sense, particularly in Catalonia, particularly across Spain, that Barcelona was his refuge. Barcelona was the place that he went to kind of get away from that, the place where everybody played to him and played from him, the place where everyone appreciated him, that everyone kind of welcomed him in. And watching the last international break and watching the smiles, and again, this is superficial, but watching the smiles from Argentina, watching the sense of importance in that Argentinian team, and knowing what is now the case in Catalonia, I think it's very tempting, isn't it, to look at those two scenarios and say to yourself, hang on, have these two swapped sides now? Has Messi gone the other way? Is the refuge now the Argentinian national team from Barcelona? One thing we do know, of course, because he said it repeatedly, because he tried to leave in the summer, is that this is not where he wanted to be. Now, that's not to say that this situation can't be made good. That's not to say that long term he doesn't stay for the rest of his career. It's not to say that he will not be successful. But we know for a fact, because he said so repeatedly and very, very publicly and very directly, he did not want to be here.
If I'm a fan, I'll say tough. I'll say, this is your situation. This is where you are now. You are still the captain of my club, and I still want you to step up when it's necessary. I don't expect you to put in swashbuckling performances as maybe you have done in the past, but in a big game, I want you to be the visible leader.
Yeah, and I think, of course, that's part of the question mark that we all had in the summer when he announced that he wanted to leave, and then when he announced that he was staying, but only staying, and he made this very, very clear publicly, because there was no way out, because the only way out was through a court case which he might not win, and which would have been extremely damaging for everybody. But at the same time, it's curious, despite that, and despite those doubts and the question marks about commitment, but I think, you know what, I think more than commitment, I think it's question marks about his emotional state, question marks about his if you like, his subconscious level of commitment, rather than the question of whether he goes onto the pitch and tries. I think most people will give him the benefit of the doubt on that. I think most Barcelona fans, partly of course because of what he's done for so many years, and that sense that they owe him, that sense that they believe in him, I think still most Barcelona fans would look at him and would say, he's not the first person we'd be pointing the finger at. And even those who do point the finger at Messi would say, yeah, but this is partly a product of a whole series of factors building over the last 2 or 3 years at least, almost certainly over the last 5 or 6 years, but possibly maybe even over the last 7, 8, 9 years. And so I think while you're right that fans will maybe look at him and say, look, I want you to be committed, I want you to fight, I want you to go onto the pitch, I want you to perform, I want you to lead. To be honest with you, I think most fans probably believe that he will and does and is continuing to do those things. I don't think that's necessarily a doubt now. The doubt, I guess, is more about his emotional commitment, whether there's some subconscious kind of tailing off of that degree of commitment.
I think every football fan loves watching Messi at his complete best, and I hope come the end of the season he's got 50 goals and 50 assists and he's been brilliant and he's scored amazing runs. What if he doesn't, Sid?
Yeah. I don't know, and you're right, everybody loves watching him play. I think it would be a really awful way for his time at Barcelona to come to an end. That said, the way it looked like it was coming to an end would have been a pretty bad way as well. The last game was an 8-2, the kind of the bitterness that would have led to the departure. Obviously, I think everyone wishes in an ideal world that José María Bartomeu, the president, and his board get forced out, that Messi has some degree of trust in the people coming in, that those people are competent and build a good team around him, and that Barcelona fans get, I mean, who knows? What would it be? Another 2 years, another 3 years maybe out of him, possibly even more. Who knows how long it would be, and he continues to play well. But you're right, I think there is that risk, isn't there? That this final season becomes, if you like, a season too far. It becomes a sort of a drift towards the end that wouldn't necessarily be a complete disaster in terms of the way the season plays out, but it would just be kind of a slipping away. And as well, the other thing is, and of course we don't know how this will play out yet between now and the end of the season, it's perfectly plausible, isn't it, that's a slipping away in silence without fans in the stadium. And I think that too would be a very sad way for this to end.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week, subscribe to ESPN+.